Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to have you all here for a new discussion covering optimizing pharma by leveraging master data. Of course, it's an episode specifically dedicated to the challenges in the pharma industry and how master data management can really help. Now, of course, for today, I have a wonderful guest, a person that many of you, of course, already know. We have Brian Thompson, the CEO and visionary at AstroCitia. But before I call up Brian on stage, I'd like to ask you where you're coming from. We have a great group of people today, and I'm really looking forward for you to leave a comment there, ask a question, because we're here for this reason to take as many questions and as many insights, and why not as many challenges that you're experiencing right now. So I'm in the wonderful capital of Armenia, Yerevan. It's a great day here. It's almost it's 7 o'clock here actually, and we have also here Joseph from Zurich. Great to have you here, Joseph. Pleasure to have you here. Sabina is also here, of course, from Prague, and welcome you all. Now, before we get into the topic of today, I want to remind you all that in less than a month from now, on the 12th and 13th of June, we have the 7th Data Management Marathon. For those of you in the audience that don't know about it yet, the Data Management Marathon is an online event for every data lover. We have more than 30 data leaders that will be presenting their data stories, what they have done, what worked, what didn't work, and of course, for every single presentation that we have at this event, we have 10 minutes of Q&A to make sure that everyone in the audience can ask questions to their data heroes. After all, true, it is an online event, but we made sure that it's also an interactive event, because if you're just there watching without asking questions, how can you make the content relevant for you? So I invite you all, if you haven't done already, to get the ticket for the Data Management Marathon, the one and only marathon for every data lover. We also have Natalia here. Actually, you can write to Natalia if you would like to get a ticket for that. From Prague, of course. And I believe it is time that we start diving into the topic of today. So why are we talking about optimizing pharma by leveraging master data? Very often we hear that master data challenges are much more the same than they are different. At the same time, there are specific peculiarities about the pharma industry, and this is actually something that Brian will talk about, describing what is different as well as how to prioritize master data in the pharma industry, which is very important and very different compared to other industries. So, without any further ado, it's an honor to welcome again on stage Brian Thompson, who is not only a supporter of most of our conferences and events, but a true friend of thinkers, always bringing fantastic topics, original views, and always capable of making master data management much more concrete. You can almost feel it. You should feel it. You should feel its power. So, welcome, Brian Thompson. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hi, Pio. Thanks so much for having me today. Looking forward to today and talking about a very important topic within pharma.
Very good. Very good. Well, many in our audience know you already, but for those that don't know you yet, tell us something about yourself.
Well, I've been working in the industry for many years. Can't tell that I'm that old, but that's a different topic. Um, it's um, it's been hard and very a great pleasure at the same time of working with large master data projects around the world. Pharma kind of caught my interest very early on. I've been working in the healthcare sector as well, knowing a lot of the issues. So for me, I always like solving problems, and I think pharma has a very specific challenge where it's the massive complexity all the way from strategic sourcing, raw materials, etc., through to manufacturing and the more complex sales when it comes to group purchasing organizations. IDMP demands, clinical trials, etc. So it's just what I try and do is bring innovation and bring new ways of thinking. Because for me, it's a change. It's a change management of the organization that drives me and drives AstroCity and the way we work. And and again, that's also where AstroCity, the name came from. It's astrocytes, so it's the neural network of the brain and the whole organism, and that is critical for actually administering medicine, making sure that the key elements go to the right places of the whole organism. So that's why we're called astrocytia, connecting the whole body and the mind as well.
Excellent, thank you. So in the pharma industry, I have seen that you know data management, MDM, were not really looked at much until certain regulations started to make it a necessity. Now, how do we how is this situation lived in the organizations? Meaning, if data management comes as a necessity in order to skip a fine, to avoid paying a fine, that's one thing. But is it also perceived as a tool and as an initiative to go beyond that, to actually enhance the performance of the organization or not?
Well, again, the regulations and the rules in certain markets and certain ingredients has been a blessing when it comes to master data, but it's definitely almost been more of a curse, because that's kind of set the standard for how we operate within the pharma industry, what we need to control of master data. But it's kind of been reverse engineering master data as we go, instead of actually looking at the holistic picture, of looking at what is actually the business needs, what are the real pain points inside of the organization, instead of just trying to hit the target when it comes to regulations and what data you need as minimum to deliver. So it's kind of been running after the train that's been going for a while, and people are getting tired. So it's there's a huge potential of kind of revamping what we've done already within pharma, and repurposing that for a much more holistic picture of the whole value chain, but making sure it's connected and not disconnected, which is unfortunately a lot of the cases that we see throughout the world.
So essentially, we need to transform master data from a bandage to a torch in order to move forward in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We can use what we have, repurpose it, and make it much more, let's say, appropriate inside of the organization. Because the problem is that regulations is not fun, right? It's something you have to adhere to due to due diligence and requirements in the market, but it's not because you wanted to in the first place. And I think that's one of the major issues within pharma. That's why there's no real governance, there's no real ownership. It's due the ownership comes through demand, not through actual wanting to govern the data. And I think this is where we have a huge opportunity of actually turning that around now, with looking at many other industries as well as inspiration for the pharma industry, um, and healthcare and biotech for that matter, right? So there's a lot of good potential out there. We just have to kind of translate it into the pharma world.
How do we do that?
A big dictionary, I can say. Um, it's making it easy to understand. That's the whole thing, because I think it's become so technical within the pharma. There's so many acronyms, so many abbreviations of various purposes, that it's just, even for management, it gets almost incomprehensible to find out, well, okay, you're the expert, you do what you need, but we forget the goal of it. What is the purpose of what we're trying to drive here? And I think it's a lot around going back to the core values, the core principles of what are we trying to do. We're trying to help patients, we're trying to develop new drugs, new ways of working. That's what we're trying to do, and through that we can help the customer and the patients a lot easier. And I think that
Hmm.
that purpose has kind of been forgotten in all the details and all the operational silos that is in with any pharma company.
Well, indeed. So basically, going back to the original reasons and connecting master data, let's say, to the original mission of the company.
Yeah, because again, ask yourself the questions: how much value am I bringing to the purpose of our patients? Right. Many will see we're trying, but again, it's just an uphill battle with lousy systems, if any, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of PDFs flying around, so we can conquer the PDFs, but then we have our data in PDFs. It's a PDF-driven world, right? I think we had a conversation previously. You thought it was a very well-documented industry, and it is in some cases, but it's very still document driven, and that is unfortunately not the way to go forward. Again, we have the patients in focus when we talk about clinical trials, developing new ingredients, developing new ways of trying different methodologies, new approaches, new technology, even in vitro experiments that has not been possible before, combining different technologies, also biotechnologies, of actually creating completely new solutions that weren't there before. But
Yeah.
that is unfortunately extremely disconnected when it comes to people and silos working together.
How do we simplify things, and how do we make sure that this silos mentality, we overcome this silos mentality? Because I can imagine that in pharma, with all the regulations, with all the acronyms, it might be even more complex than in other industries.
It is, and obviously in a regulated industry, it is difficult. If you're not hitting the regulations, you can't sell your product. It's that simple.
Yeah.
If you can't defend your marketplace, you'll get beaten by the competitors. Um, but the more, again, breaking it down into smaller bits, smaller logical bits, the easier it is for everybody to understand. And then you can add your layer of complexity any way you want. But start with the simple approach, because if people don't get that, don't get the importance of data and actually translating. Speaking of translations, what does it commercially bring to the business? What does it bring of risk reduction? That is where the regulation started. Risk, great, but where's the sales around that, right? So if you can get the passion going within supply chain, within quality assurance, clinical trials, the way you go to market, with where you're proud of your products. Everybody's proud of the products, but the way to get there has just been very, very painful. Um,
Hmm.
so, right, we talked about keeping it tactile, and I think that's also very important, because ultimately it's around the end product, right?
Yeah.
That is what the customer sees. That is what the resellers see. Um, and again, we're used to looking at the product, yes, but there's a lot of stuff. So this end consumer product, right, consists of many years of research, many years of trials, etc. And one of the major pain points within pharma is obviously not only the packaging like we're holding here, it's the different branding across the world. So it's called Panadil in Denmark.
Hmm.
In the UK and Australia, it's called Panadol, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly we have maybe 6 to 8, maybe 12 different variants of the same product, different packaging, but the ingredients are the same. But the packaging inlay, also translations, all the way back to R&D and the way the engineers have actually developed the product. That goes together in the whole value chain. But again, as part of this discussion, when it comes to supply chain and manufacturing optimization, right? Do we have it in a blister pack? Well, I have it in a pack of 10 here, but it comes in a packet of 20. It comes in 50, a jar with 50 and a jar with 100, right? But just that management of packaging, and also stuff that we are facing big time now, is ESG within the pharma industry. Packaging, distribution, and ultimately also combining the hard part when it comes to the pill itself or the product itself. The ingredients are the same, but there might be a competitive product having exactly the same. So how do you
Yeah.
benchmark that? How do you compare that? Price points, market segmentation, etc. Because that's what you're up against. The better data you can have, again, the customers, they don't really care around your internal trouble. They want to have the right way of navigating towards the right product for them. And the same goes for pharmacies, the same goes for doctors, nurses, hospitals, insurance companies. How much subsidiary are they actually giving to various products in various markets? And it's that complexity that is really, really key of combining so you can create the best optimal organization around it.
Of course, and there is a side which is, of course, the competitive, the competition side, where you want to
Yeah.
have the best data you can possibly have, and then there is safety as well. Of course, I mean you're literally dealing with the vital information there. You cannot really mess it up.
Yeah.
So um, it seems, therefore, it seems to start very much with communication, right? Eliminating barriers, trying to cause a mindset shift. How do we make it happen, though? Literally, what have you done, for instance, with some of your clients to cause this mindset shift and make sure that they follow with it?
Well, it requires some knowledge and some leadership. That's for sure. And the more practical examples you can get, the better. And I think that is where we can really help guide the customers, guide the pharma industry in the right direction. Because what I like now is that there's a lot of collaboration between different pharma companies when it comes to IDMP and a lot of different initiatives. So it's actually a kind of a good community to be in. But again, everybody's trying their little own path, and it is hard. And I think the more we can drive towards the ultimate goal, which is helping patients, better life quality, etc. That's what it's all about. Um, then the tricks of the trade we use is engagement of the key stakeholders, the people that have the operational pain points every day,
Hmm.
the people that develop new drugs, the new ingredients, but they're not feeling heard with inside of the organization. All the knowledge they have is not being expedited all the way out to the customer. So there's a lot of pride, and if we can leverage that by actually serving better data when it comes to supply chain, to the customers, to the resellers, etc., and ultimately giving the end customers, B2B or B2C, a much better experience. Suddenly, it's actually you can see the fruit of the hard work you're putting in instead of just the trouble around it.
Yeah, I think it's not easy though, because pride in what you do with the information that you hold can also cause division,
Yeah,
shifting this pride into something that leads to collaboration. That's where you really advance. Everyone brings the best to the table. Everyone brings, um, you know, the best contribution, because again, there are certain people in the product development, there are certain people in sales as well that just know things and need to be there in the conversation, not excluded from it, and not to make it feel like it's too complicated as well. So simplifying also the communication between them.
true, but it's also around not making it too troublesome of actually doing your job, right? And I
Yeah,
think that's part of the frustration that I see is that people love the company. Don't get me wrong; they love the customers, they love the purpose, but the internal trouble and manual handholding is causing many people to leave. And that is
yeah,
very dangerous in a brain driven organization where you're so dependent on knowledge that if people leave, they take all the knowledge with them, and that is a huge danger. So talk about risk reduction. This is a key area that really needs addressing. Um, Motivation, you can see pride, but you also have to respect, right? So there's knowledge, there are silos that are specialized. It's all fine, but if people can see if we work together, the result is again 2 plus 2 becomes 5. And I think that is the key ingredient we try and bring to the table, that together we think in different ways, we have different angles and perspective on data talk about sales, what is a customer to them? Probably completely different to what we have in sourcing and product development, right?
Yeah.
So it's bringing all of that knowledge together because you're stronger together, and I think that's the key element. Also with master data, these little silos, they won't get anywhere. It's too nerdy, too deep. You can't use the data commercially, and I think that's a major flaw in the way we're set up. So it's getting that connectivity from sales and the customers, and then having the outside in view. What do we actually need? What do we need to sell more? What do we need to hit the market even better next time? Can we work with marketing in a different way, right? So there's so many things when it comes to development, all the way through to product launches and impact, because either you hit it or you don't. But the closer you are to the customers and the resellers out there, the easier it is to have a very good commercial success as well. And that's what the management buys. They buy results. They don't care around the internal trouble and silos, etc. They want the financial results. So, with one of the clients we're working with, again, our goal is to actually see the work we do reflected in their stock
Mm.
within a year, right? So we try to put ourselves out there. We try to really put our hands in the dough in the bakery, right? It's really important that people are invested, and if we are invested, everybody else is invested. And I think it's always good to have a purpose for you, so it's relevant. What's in it for me? Well, in sourcing, there's this, and this for you. In quality, there's this, and this for you. If you can make that master data relevant, suddenly you don't need to fight for ownership anymore. People understand the purpose for them, but also for the greater good of the company.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And how is it? I mean, do you put people in the same room? Do you have meetings, moderate meetings between them? How do you make this connectivity happen?
It's a mix of let's say blended meetings where we have a mix of IT, we have a mix of management and the operational element as well. But a lot of it is done through almost personal interviews throughout the value chain, finding out what is the real issues um,
Hmm.
from product development, and there we get again a very human approach to what is the actual issues. Some are not IT issues or data issues. It's collaboration or lack of communication. Sometimes they haven't even been in the room with marketing, right? So there's just those silos because the companies in pharma are usually very huge. So it's not only silos within the departments; it's also countries, different ways of cultures throughout the organization, and that's also what we try and bring together to say, well, again, diversify. Diverse is strong if you use it the right way. But if you're too different and not working together, it becomes another silo and another pain point um, that causes the business big time of concern and issues. Um, and it's efficiency cost, right? You can't drive a product to market without so many hurdles inside, and it's just not efficient way of working.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've read recently that pharma is really looking into the adoption of artificial intelligence as
Mm.
well, because I mean it does hold incredible promise, let's say, in the field of pharma. I think this is one more reason why they need to invest in data. They need to invest in MDM because you can't really take full advantage of AI without it, isn't it?
Well, that's the danger of AI, if I'm honest. If you feed it with bad data, the
Yeah.
outcome is going to be completely untrustworthy, right? So it's also around having the clean data and the right context of that data, because well, the data says this. Well, in what context? In which country? What person have you tried it on? What clinical trials have you actually been through? And if you don't have a stringent way of doing that that can be adapted to whatever purpose you put it into, it's useless, and you'll just get wrong answers. So I think if you use it in the right way, it's fantastic. We use it for translations, we use it for side effects. We have a lot of in the public sector that are trying to feed um, the raw material, the ingredients,
Yeah.
known side effects, and then apply it to their patient registers anonymously, of course. But right, we have an example in Denmark where they've screened 60,000 people with cancer. Right,
Yeah.
what kind of treatments have they gone through? What kind of medications did they get at a certain point in time? Because timing here is very different, right? Some will improve, then you need to readdress the data issues. What then? So it's kind of and this is where artificial intelligence is amazing. But
Yeah.
without getting the proper feed of data and the context it's fed through, uh, it can be a pretty dangerous path to tread.
Yeah, because it's just an amplifier, isn't it? You have problems with your data, then you're going to have problems with the application of a powerful tool on top of
Yeah,
it. Quite
yeah,
simple. And you're using it in a field where you really, you know, where data is vital, literally. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
So I think that where we try and apply it as well, translations, of course, but making sure that the wording for certain segments is also targeted.
yeah,
So translations is fine. It's the market positioning within certain customer segments, right? Because a lot of pharma companies have multitude of products and brands they sell to the same customer. The trouble is they don't always know because they've screwed up their customer master data or the way that they have the distributor master data actually adhered to. Um, because sales is driven through KPIs, sales are driven through bonuses, right? But that's where the complexity of pharma comes in. Group purchasing organization where you might not know the customer, might not know the tender process, who is actually behind that one. Public bidding, right? There's a lot of rules and regulations, speaking of that as well, that you have to adhere to. But the better data you can give them, the better decisions they can also do.
oh, 100%. Now, there is obviously a compliance fatigue,
Mm.
right? And the IDMP. I don't know how many years have we been talking about it? Almost a decade.
Yeah, almost a decade, right? But I think in the
Yeah,
last 3 to 5 years, I know a lot of people involved in the IDMP process. And as I said, this is where I'm really happy around the collaboration that's actually going on at
yeah.
the moment, and that people, even competitors, are actually willing to share pretty vital information to get to the common goal. So I think there's a huge potential right now of getting that master data right, but being in the driving seat of all the different standards that go into IDMP when it comes to packaging, what kind of approach do you have to certain medicines, etc. So there's, I think, 4 or 5 different ISO standards you have to adhere to as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things coming together. But as I said from the beginning, if you don't have the whole thing in grip internally, you can never adhere to IDMP or any other standards. So as I said, it's the automating the manual process of getting the right data, getting the ownership where the knowledge is, so you don't have to fight for the ownership. You actually get it automatically. So it's a journey, and with pharma, it's a traditional business. We can all also see that it requires a lot of convincing. It requires a lot of repetition, small different use cases that actually says the same, but gets the same output. So, but as long as you have the management backing, and I think that's the important translation here. Keep it tangible. As I said, it's much easier to sell your points internally because there's a lot of budget when it comes to master data, but is it being spent the right way? Not always.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, because sometimes, especially when it's tied to regulations and compliance, it's not it's not a growth mindset that steps in. It's
Nope.
an emergency. It's a panic mindset. And what do you do when you're panicking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very important actually to go beyond this sort of mindset, the also the compliance fatigue, and sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. How do you do that? Can you share some examples of really how companies can go beyond the compliance? What are some use cases? What are some drivers aside from the compliance challenge that companies should go after? Let's say.
Yeah, it's again, when we look at the whole cross-functional area of pharma, it's a lot of different stakeholders we have to engage with. But that's just the way it is, and it's between 30 and 50 different stakeholders you have to align with. IT is another one, really, really critical, because again, the system landscape can be horrible. It can be very heavily customized, but again, it's due to trying to adhere to certain standards and compliance and regulations. Here's the stick, right? You have to do it. So it's also a matter of getting IT on board and really saying, guys, okay, if we were a startup company, we would do it the same way again? Probably not.
Mhm.
So it's that startup mentality as well, that we don't have to look at all the legacy only. We have to see of what would be the ideal way of doing it, and then create a roadmap to actually get there. So it requires the engagement of the management, and requires the leadership of actually trying to do something new, because it's also a mindset exercise. It's a traditional business, so you have to be able to experiment. You do that all the time with your products. So why not do that with master data as well? And I think we can take that an analogy and actually create the same. Why not try and create a new ingredients for master data, a new way of trying clinical trials for master data, almost.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something really important there, the startup mentality. I think it can be really a massive competitive differentiator here. Because the more we're going forward, the more we're seeing that agility and this sort of startup mentality is fundamental to go
Mm,
forward. Because regulations are going to come. You're not even going to be compliant yet with IDMB. That something else is coming. I mean ESG and so on.
mm.
So that is a constant. But what about growth? And growth can only be, approached in this manner, where there is a bit of this agile startup mentality about attempting way forwards, attempting something that someone hasn't thought about yet, and that doesn't get stopped immediately within the organization, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, a very good point, Pio. Because again, pharma drives on innovation, right? If you
Yeah.
free up time of not having to spend in spreadsheets or PDFs, copying, pasting, all sorts of rubbish, right? Then you get the creativity back, and this is where the pharma companies can really leverage their knowledge and their passion again, and that will help the growth not only of people but also the whole business, because then you're more relevant internally, you're more relevant externally towards the customers and your partners, research partners as well. So that's also, again, you asking around the small tips and tricks. Having this level of inspiration and experimentation is really, really key. Get some fresh eyes, get some fresh ways of doing things, new students that don't have the hindrance that everybody else has for working in 20 years within the pharma company, right? So
Yeah.
it's getting those fresh breath of air and ways of innovating and thinking new ways. But it requires the mindset, and that's where we start.
Well, if you're able to put all these people together in the same room and everyone comes out of alive, I can just suggest everyone to experiment that with you because it's difficult. There's lots of big opinions and a sense of protecting what you're doing. Everyone wants to feel more relevant. Everyone wants to feel so. If they all come out alive and with something learned, I can definitely recommend everyone in the audience to follow up with you, Brian, because it's quite remarkable to get that done.
Yeah, and it's again big companies, yes, but it's still people. I think that's the whole point of it all. That if we can get the key elements of an organization working together, then it's not as hard as you should think. There's plenty of passion out there. You just have to get it personified and get them together. So and then get it trickling out in the organization. Because I think that's the trick. We start with almost the people and the operational level, and if it works there, we don't have to fight for change. They've already bought into the change.
Which is a key step, a
Yeah,
starting step for
yeah,
doing all of the things we discussed.
yeah.
Well, Brian, I'm really curious to hear as we move forward some new stories with the customers, some stories from the pharma industries, of how you managed to advance this mentality and how to create this shift in mentality, really. But I would also like to ask you, because you're going to be with us in 1 month from now at the Data Management Marathon for
Yes.
the sixth time, I believe. So you've always
Easy.
brought some, yeah, incredible, incredible. You've always brought great topics. What are you going to talk about this time?
Well, as you know, we always like talking about change and change management, but again, the elements that we use for change is proof of concepts. It's rapid prototyping. So we're going to talk about rapid prototyping using master data, um, getting people engaged. So it's not actually just a PowerPoint; it's actually stuff you can almost touch. Um, so we'll bring some examples of how we've managed to implement rapid prototyping as part of our process, but also some concrete examples from a few of our clients uh, that has actually evolved into real solutions through
Hmm.
experimentation and through rapid prototyping. It's a brilliant way of navigating change. If you can get people engaged in something they can touch themselves, it's just a completely different ball game. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Rapid
Oh
prototyping.
yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, because that's the problem sometimes with experimenting and change. It sounds good, but you can't see it yet. So there is an enormous degree of risk and an enormous distance between, let's say, the dream and the final product. But when you're able to see and make this tangible, that's a that's a massive help there to embrace this mindset shift.
Also to embrace innovation and actually
Yeah.
being able to play, right? We play as kids, we try out all different kinds of things. Why don't we do that as adults as well, right? So sometimes it's just thinking crazy thoughts because maybe a third of them will actually come true. But if you don't experiment and set the bar higher of what could actually be done, combining master data with artificial intelligence and big data, right? What could you actually achieve? So it's some of those things we love putting together, and now we have some very tangible results to showcase.
That's really, I'm really looking forward to hear that. And as always, it's such a pleasure to speak to you because we don't speak about the technicalities of master data, although we could. The
Mm,
conversation instead always goes to the fundamental initial steps that need to be taken at the human level in organizations in order to reawaken this passion that drives then the change that is necessary for companies to be competitive.
exactly.
So, always a pleasure, Brian.
Same here, Pio. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Indeed, indeed. We'll see each other digitally and then again in October in Prague. So I'm really looking forward to both occasions. Now, for those in the audience that would like to know more about everything we've discussed, from optimizing pharma to rapid prototyping, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, connect through LinkedIn. You're on it already, so feel free to connect through there. Otherwise, feel free to email brth@astrocitia.com. brth@astrocitia.com. Happy to have any questions, any comments, any thoughts, ideas, or any needs of further conversation. Always open.
Excellent, excellent. What's the last thing? Do you have a final message you would like to give to the data management and MDM professionals that are watching?
There's no time as now, right? We've been talking about master data for a very long time, but I think there's no time as now. Accelerate, start thinking new ways, changing the mindset. It's fun. And I think that's the best advice and last word I'll give. It can be a lot of fun working with master data, but you have to give it the love and attention and innovation to help drive it.
Like everything else, isn't it? Like for
Exactly.
everything else.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, that's the perfect way of closing our talk today. I want to thank you, everyone in the audience, for being with us today. And yeah, I wish us all a great continuation of the day ahead.
See you soon, guys.